Thank you for listening to the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast with hosts Clara and Jimmy Hinton. If you're new to the podcast, please look us up on your favorite podcast app, subscribe, like, and share so that you never miss an episode. If you'd like to further support us, visit patreon.com/speakingout and check out the different rewards. You'll find exclusive rewards if you sign up as a patron of the podcast. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the show. Welcome to this week's podcast. Thank you to our patrons who make the podcast possible. We always appreciate you guys. And later today, we have a Q&A with our patrons.
Yes, we do.
So actually, right after we record here, we have our monthly Q&A. So that's just one of the benefits that people get for being patrons. And we just always appreciate them. So thank you.
Thank you.
So this is kind of an interesting topic.
It is, Jimmy. It is.
What do successful advocates have in common? And I guess successful is a pretty subjective term.
Yeah, it is.
But what do they have in common? What do people who are quote unquote successful advocates have in common? Is it a big platform? Because I would say I'm probably on the lower end of in terms of numbers for my platforms, Facebook and Twitter.
Low end.
Yeah, I think I
don't
have.
do the Twitter thing.
No, your Twitter numbers are pretty low. But then your Facebook with the grief is what,
huge.
over 250,000.
Oh yeah, that's huge.
Which is massive.
Yeah. Right.
So my Facebook, my professional Facebook page is I just broke 3,000, which when I look at other victims advocates, that's a pretty small number. You know, a lot of them are 8,000, 10,000 plus. So is it the platform that you have? Is that what makes you successful? Is it I guess another way to put that is the number of people that you're reaching across your platform, which could translate to number of lives that are being impacted by the work that you do. Is that what determines success? And I guess it depends on what we call success. Personally, I think that success is when you change one life.
I was hoping you would say that.
I think that's a success.
That is a huge success because impacting one life doesn't just impact one life. It begins a spiral.
That's right.
And one life that impacts another life that impacts another life. And then you see a chain of, chain link reaction. And it's amazing what impacting one life can do.
So, I think success is impacting, whether it's one life or many lives. It's just having an impact on someone, a good impact, a positive impact, and then replicating that over and over.
Right.
Do you stop with one person, or do you replicate that model repeatedly? Right. And I think that determines your quote unquote success. And I say quote unquote because again, that it's a really subjective term.
Right.
But what sparked this is I get a lot of people who reach out to me and they say, "Can you help me figure out how to start building a platform? I need to build a platform in order for people to take me seriously." In my mind, I'm screaming out, "No, you don't.
Yeah, right.
No, you don't." And so today we're going to talk about kind of the big picture, that broad spectrum that some of us advocates do, who do have a bigger platform, and then that macro level, that smaller level, where you actually get to take relationships really deep, on a local level or a personal level. Both camps are needed.
Right. Yeah.
And one's not right and one's not wrong.
No. And one is just as equally important as the other.
Yes.
So I hope we remember that. Often we get discouraged because we're not part of the big platform. We're not in charge of a group, or we're not leading a group, and we feel like, well, my work doesn't matter. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It matters every bit.
Yes, it does.
Every bit.
Yeah. So, my answer to people when they're trying to build a platform is, first you have to know what your personality is. If you're not a gifted public speaker, if you don't like being in the spotlight, so to speak, don't pursue it.
Right.
Because I can tell you from experience, and I'm, used to be very extroverted. That's interestingly kind of changing, where
Jimmy.
I prefer being locked away and, in my own quiet space. And what I've found in my life is that building a platform, and I didn't seek out to build a platform. The
Right.
platform kind of found me.
It happened.
And I think same for you.
Yeah.
Just
Absolutely.
impacting people. You're a very gifted writer. You're a
Well-
very gifted speaker, and I think the platform found you.
My grief site, which is now almost 300,000 followers, which blows me away,
Yeah.
started out with one person, me. And I needed help in that area. I couldn't find the help I needed, so I started writing about it. And it began with one person.
Yes.
Eventually, one more person joined me, and we started talking. And it's been, I think, in existence 21 years now.
Yeah.
And that spiraled. It wasn't a fast spiral. Some people have that amount of followers in 2 years, 1 year, you
Sure.
know.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa.
Well, and same is true with our podcast. I mean,
Right.
if we look at our numbers, our numbers aren't anywhere close to what other advocates are.
Right.
And if we're just looking at raw data in terms of numbers,
Right.
we're not that impressive of a podcast.
No,
but that's not our goal, is to have
Right.
this massive audience.
To the people that are being impacted, that's they consider the podcast important.
Yes.
It is the most important thing they have,
Yes.
possibly. So we have to remember that as we're doing this work, it's not about us. It
That's
is
exactly right.
never about us. It's about the good that we hope and pray to do, the people that we hope and pray to help, one by one by one.
Yes.
By one.
Well, and I guess while we're on the subject, I just now thought of this, which is kind of interesting. I was never interested in a platform. I tried.
Right.
I went down the route of having a nonprofit organization. I loathed it. I absolutely
Right.
despised it. I spent the majority of my time managing paperwork
Right.
and filing things with the government and trying to figure out taxes, and it was an absolute, for my personality,
Right.
it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
And it took away from having those deep relationships. Now, the successful, again, kind of a loose term, but the successful advocates who do have a big platform, who reach a lot of lives, and I would definitely classify you in that realm with the grief
my
work.
grief. Right.
You definitely impact a lot of lives. But I'll say, with a crowd of 300,000 people, you can't have deep, meaningful relationships with people.
I can't, and it's
It's
interesting,
impossible.
Jimmy, because the first group, and I'll call it the first group, solid group, 21 years ago, they are still part of this large group, and they miss the intimacy that
That's
we
right.
had. I can't answer everybody on that. Every
Not even
day-
close.
No. Every day there are hundreds of pleas for help on that Facebook page. I can't do it. But in
Yeah.
the beginning, when it was just me and 2 or 3 other people, and then it grew to 10 and 20, I could do that. And we formed a bond that it's lasting till this day. It'll last forever.
Yeah.
But I don't have that bond with the other people. And
Yeah.
often I miss that,
Yeah.
and yet it grew, this place grew, not by intention, but it grew by purpose.
Yeah.
It was there, the help was there, and people navigated to it. But it was never about me, ever.
Yeah.
Ever. And sometimes in the larger platforms, we kind of get feeling that, man, I'm so good and I'm so important.
Yeah.
we have to watch that,
Yeah.
and we do lose that. There's a humbleness that goes with just being that one-on-one, growing those relationships. There really
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting because on the one hand, you have this huge platform in the realm of grief work, but then going to our podcast, we
Right.
have this small, intimate group of patrons, and we have right now, 59 patrons,
Right.
and it's the most intimate
It
group,
is.
and we
Yeah.
know each other well.
Right.
People encourage us.
Right.
I've gotten Christmas cards, birthday cards from patrons, people who
Right.
support this podcast.
Right.
We are like a family.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so here in this realm, that smaller realm, we have those deep, really impactful relationships. We message people.
Right.
We email patrons. We text patrons. We have this
There is a
relationship that we
closeness where-
cannot have on any of our other platforms.
Right, and that's not to say that both aren't needed.
That's right.
Because when I
Yep.
think of the grief, I get private messages every single solitary day, 365 days a year, saying, "This place that I come to has changed my life.
Yeah.
It gave me the help that I needed." But it's not help explicitly from me.
Yeah.
It's the others that are there that reach out then to each. So it spiraled.
Yeah.
So, up here you have written help that's being sent out every day. You have people responding. And I like to think of it as a tiered type thing where it grew. And then this mother helps this mother and this father helps this father. And it's awesome how it works. It really
See,
is.
I've never been good at the managing lots of people because I definitely, my personality is to get in the life of somebody and to connect face to face
much so.
on a
Yeah,
very
you are.
intimate,
Yeah.
personal level. And so, and I grew up, we both grew up in a small, tiny town in Shanksville, Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
Which ironically
How
has
weird
this
is
big
that?
platform,
Yeah,
from
yeah,
9/11.
right.
It was this quiet little
happened,
town of,
yeah.
230 people.
Yep.
A little village. There's no stoplight. It is a tiny, tiny little town in
Gas
the middle
station,
of nowhere.
no
Yeah.
bank.
Right.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden it landed on the map. And so I feel like Shanksville, a lot like both you and I, has one foot
Yeah.
in this small. It's still, the town still wants to maintain this quietness.
They do.
They
Yeah.
want to kind of keep to themselves.
The
They don't
intimacy-
like the spotlight.
No.
They don't like the
No.
attention. So we have that part of Shanksville, but then there's this kind of the platform finding Shanksville.
Right.
When
You got it. Yeah.
when United 93 crashed on September 11th, I mean, it permanently put that on the map, on the world
Right.
map,
Right.
forever.
Shanksville was not even on a map prior to that.
Right.
We were so tiny, we weren't even a little dot
Yeah,
on the map.
yeah.
So that's how it happens. But
But both are
Both.
impactful,
yes,
Both are
both
impacting
are
people.
very impactful.
And I still
yes.
remember when Heather Sells came, and she did a special for CBN News on the 20th anniversary
Yes,
this last year of
yes,
9/11.
yep.
She had reached out to Mom and I, and she was trying to connect with people who had direct, I guess, contact affiliation
with the survivors.
they were out at the crash site helping.
the family of all those that perished. Yes, and
Yeah.
those that helped during that period of time.
And unfortunately for her, but she was so great about it and so understanding.
Yeah.
We couldn't find people to connect her to because they
No.
said, we don't want the spotlight. 9/11 is not about us.
Yep. They didn't want that part.
And she
yeah.
she was completely
Yeah, she
understanding. And
did,
she,
yeah.
I was a little frustrated at first because I was like, it's sad that, there's this opportunity to preserve history and people aren't willing to talk. And she goes, no, I totally get it. She's like, these people's lives were completely disrupted.
Yeah.
And they don't want the spotlight. It's not about them,
No.
and they made that very
Never
clear to
was,
me.
right.
I don't want any
Right.
interviews.
Yep.
It's not about me.
Right.
And so, so in the world of advocacy, I often, as I mentioned, have people come to me and say, "Well, how do I start building a platform?" To which my response is, do you want to manage that platform and reach a wide reach of people, and have a general impact on people's lives, where I feel like you don't have that depth. You personally don't have that depth.
I personally do
but
not
you
have
are
it anymore.
wildly
I do not.
reaching a lot of people.
Yes, but
in a very powerful way.
I am not one-on-one with people
That's right.
anymore as I was in the beginning. Yes.
So my question is, do you want to build this platform where you will, once you build that platform, you will be managing that platform.
Right.
And we were just talking about this before the show. We have to watch everything we say.
Everything.
Every word we write is put under the microscope. Every word that we speak is put under the microscope. We have people out there who, believe it or not, they've wished death on us. I've had people wish that bad harm on my family, including my children. There are those people out there, and so you end up managing that kind of content to keep that off of.
You put out a lot of fires. You have to put out a lot
constantly.
of fires because people are very emotional about both topics, the grief topic and, of course, very emotional about abuse.
Yeah.
You can say one word that is the wrong word and taken out of context maybe and mistakenly it's thought to be different, the different meaning than what
or it can be triggering. Something can trigger a survivor of abuse that we say that we never we never meant to trigger anybody, but it happens.
And boy, you get brutalized because of it.
Yeah, and you have to go back and you have to know, and this is not a complaint, but you do have to go back if you care about people
and apologize,
and you have to apologize and try to make it right,
and we do
absolutely
all the time. I have to do that in the world of grief also. I just got chastised a good bit last week because I did a writing on mother's grief, and there were a group of fathers that jumped all over me, and they said, "Do you know? What about fathers?" We grieve the loss of our child too. And you're always mentioning mothers, but you don't mention fathers. They're right.
Yeah. They are, but also you're a mother. So you're writing to that which you know
because
and you're familiar with.
I experienced from the aspect of a mother, but that was hurtful to them. I left that group out.
Yeah.
So when you're managing a larger group, you have more things like that to deal with than the one-on-one interpersonal relationship that you build.
Yeah.
Where you actually get to know the people.
And if you've noticed, I mean, if anybody's noticed online, like I used to post on Twitter constantly, and that was kind of my platform that took off. For me, Facebook was this kind of real slow, for whatever reason. I wasn't doing anything different on Twitter that I was doing on Facebook, and that it's funny how that works for some people. Like same for you. Facebook blew up. Your Twitter is crickets.
No. Yeah.
So, for me, Twitter was taken off, and then my inbox was getting so full and all these messages, and I got to the point where, again, my personality is more connecting with people on a deeper level. And so I never really liked having a platform. So if you've noticed, I've kind of strayed away from Twitter, and I've been posting less and less, maybe once a week. Sometimes it's one tweet a week max.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm avoiding Twitter. It's just that I'm still trying to figure out.
It's time consuming, number one. It's very time consuming. It's thought consuming, and it's excuse me, a different platform than what is your personality.
That's right. And you do manage that platform.
You do. You have to.
And you get. Yeah. And my personality, again, it is. I feel this guilt when I can't answer somebody's message back. Well, when you have, over 4,000 on Twitter, over 3,000 on Facebook, and then Instagram is, again, that kind of flopped for me.
I've not even gone into that.
Instagram.
I don't have the time.
I just don't know how to make it work. I don't understand the platform.
The time even. Yeah.
But what that does is you end up, getting so frantic and tied up in answering these messages, and people want real answers, and you cannot get any depth from back and forth emails. You can't. It's impossible.
Right. And
So-
I guess what you're saying is success is in the eye of the beholder, somewhat. Success might mean to somebody having that huge platform like I have with the grief platform.
Yeah.
On the other hand, success might be what you're talking about, having 59 patrons and you know them very intimately.
And you can answer
you can
people back.
answer,
And you can interact with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
we don't need to beat ourselves up, number one, if we're not out there being a, big name, whatever, in the world of abuse, advocacy for abuse. And maybe we're in a job position where we deal with those who are abused, and we can definitely impact one by one by one by one. Believe me, that's doing advocacy work.
Absolutely.
Successfully.
Yes.
Successfully. And it's beautiful because when we help that one person to stand up, become stronger in their life, what's going to happen is that person will reach out and help one more and one more. And we've seen,
And not
Jimmy,
just one
you've seen
person,
it
but a whole
happen.
family unit.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Oh,
people
yeah.
people
Yes.
do start or already have families.
Right.
And if you can deeply affect somebody
Right.
for the good,
Exactly.
that has a
You have
lifelong
made a huge
reversal in their
yes,
life,
yes,
where
yeah.
they now
Yes.
are able to impact people within their family unit, and then they impact other people, and it becomes this generational impact. And you used an analogy earlier and about the flower in the field.
Of flowers. You look at a field of flowers and it is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. And by the way, I love flowers and I'm planting, my goal is to fill a whole field, my lower 3, with flowers. But what we often forget when we look at that field of flowers is those are individual flowers blooming. And without each individual bloom, we wouldn't have that beautiful field of flowers.
That's right.
So, we need to not lose perspective on the one, the meaning of one.
Yeah.
And I always come back to that and think, wow, one is that perfect number. That's that perfect thing we need, one by one by one. When I plant a field of flowers, I'm doing it one bulb at a time.
Yep.
One seed
And she does.
at a time.
If you would
I
see
do.
her
Yes.
plant, it is this meticulous.
Yes, it is. It is.
And I'm telling you,
Yeah.
when we drive up your driveway,
It's
I mean,
beautiful.
every single
It is,
time,
yeah.
it's just this breathtaking.
Yeah.
Natalie and I were just looking out at our yard the other day, and she goes, she starts laughing. She goes, "We are terrible landscapers."
Well,
It's just not.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, you didn't pass that on to me, but I can't look out and have this
because
vision.
it's a passion, it's a love,
Yeah.
it's a goal that I want to do. But that's how we help people
Yeah.
to bloom, is one by one
Yeah.
by one, and soon we'll look out and you see that whole field of blooming people, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It truly is.
I was saying to Mom earlier, one of the absolute people who I have the deepest respect for, and I've seen so many lives impacted
Yeah.
by her, is Heather Snyder. She was one of our guests here on the podcast.
Right.
She's a therapist for victim services right here in our town, and I mean, she doesn't have this big platform because that's not her focus, right?
right.
Her focus
Not
is
at all.
one-on-one counseling victims for victim services, doing her job. She gets down to the grind. She gets in there, does her job, does it exceptionally well.
Right.
And I've heard so many positive things from people about Heather. And I think here's somebody on the local level that probably, beyond our town, talking to a handful of
Yeah,
people, it's not like you're gonna go to California and
No.
they'll be like, I know Heather,
Right.
like that's not her goal. But I'm telling you, she is impacting lives on a level that I've not seen before. And it's not just her. I know so many people like that.
Yeah. Right.
that will never get
Yes.
any
No.
public recognition
No.
for the work that they do.
And that's what I think that's a dangerous line to cross when we get feeling a little kind of big, you know,
That's right.
feeling kind of big that we have this big platform and all. We need to watch very much so that our work, our passion doesn't become about puffing ourselves up
Yeah.
and reaching numbers and making
That's right.
sure we're bigger than the comparison game
Yep.
and all. We need to just remember that when we do work from our heart, one by one by one, that's what God wants us to do. Really, isn't that what
Yes.
God tells us to do? And when we do our very best, that's success.
Yes.
That really is.
And I think you hit the
Really
nail on the
is.
head. I mean, you've mentioned it several times now, and that's, to me, that's the one common thread that I see. Whether people have a big platform and are very successful, and I know advocates that I just step back and I look at the work that they're doing, and I'm like, they are reaching thousands of people
Really, there
every
are
single
some
day.
who are doing a beautiful
And they're doing
job of
such
it.
an amazing
Yeah.
job at it, and I have the
Beautiful.
deepest respect
Yeah,
for them.
beautiful. Right.
And then I look at people on a local level that don't have a platform. They have no professional Facebook page or Twitter or Instagram. Some don't even have social media accounts at all.
They are
And
those nameless souls that have impacted lives that you and I will never know about.
That's
but
right.
to that one person whose life was changed, that person becomes the hero to
Yes.
them. They
and
save
they
them.
and they will never view
Yeah.
themselves as a hero, and that's where
No.
you hit the nail
Yeah.
on the head by saying this common thread in both camps, and neither one is right or wrong.
Right.
Both are needed,
Right.
equally needed.
Right.
Both in the public arena and on the smaller scale, private, one-on-one. Both are equally needed. Both people are equally, I have equal respect for them. But the common thread is what you said earlier, it's not about them. They
No,
realize
not at all.
this is
Right.
not about
Right.
building a platform. It's not about, the nuts and the bolts behind marketing and all that stuff. Now, some of that stuff might be there, but the humble
Right.
people who are
That's why I wanna
genuinely
say,
making
right.
an impact
It has to be
for the
sincere.
good
Right.
in people's
Right.
lives,
Right.
they all have that same thread. It is not about
Right,
me.
Jimmy.
I'm here to
and
serve
that's
other
what's
people.
sustaining it, in a work that
It is.
if that work sustains for years and years, that there is a genuine passion behind it, and
Yes.
it's not about that person. Because sometimes, well, look at the mega churches. Sometimes when they grow, they just boom. All of a sudden you have 5,000 people in a church. Often that church will break off, and you kind of watch it crumble, the enthusiasm and all, because you haven't been reaching hearts.
I think I want to say it was Tim Keller who just recently, just this past week, I saw something. And he said we have to intentionally break up the megachurch because it's a culture and it's a structure that is always poisonous. It always breaks down.
believe that.
You
I just
cannot
really-
have deep,
right.
meaningful relationships.
No.
And in fact, it ends up so many lives get hurt because it's this big push, this big rush to get all these people crammed into one place.
Right.
And he says, you have the intimate relationships that break down. And so he was saying, we are intentionally breaking these mega churches into smaller churches. I think I want to say in Manhattan is where they're starting, but they're intentionally dividing these mega churches and trimming them down to
Sure.
churches like ours that are,
So
under
you
100
can
people.
actually get to know the needs, the wants, the desires,
Yes.
the hurts, the pains of one another,
Yes.
and deal with that,
Yeah.
and heal.
Yes.
Actually, yeah.
So again,
Yeah. Not knocking the big churches, but just saying there is a poison kind of that goes with that, and that is you can't meet the individual needs on that big level.
Right.
You just
You
can't.
can't.
You can't.
And I've seen mega churches. I mean, I've studied them for years, and mega churches have been doing this for a long time, but they're not doing what, and I'm pretty sure it was Keller, but they're not doing what he recommends, to actually break them up into smaller individual churches.
There are churches that actually call small group.
But what they'll do is they'll break them up within that big building structure.
Right.
Because if you have one big mass group of people, that intimacy just breaks down, and it lends itself to so many toxic things that can happen, and abuse, and on and on and on. And so they'll resize it within that big structure. And that's been going on for, as long as mega churches have been around.
Right.
So all that to say, if you're kind of teetering and saying, what's my purpose, and how can I make an impact on people, and how do I begin to build a platform? First, I would say, what's your personality, and what's your purpose? What's your goal?
Right.
If your personality is you can mix and mingle with 1,000 people and walk into a crowd, and that doesn't intimidate you, that doesn't bother you, or that energizes you, then I would say definitely go down that route of starting that platform, or letting the platform find you, and just start being humble, and start writing, and start hammering your thoughts out, and it will work out for you, because it's your personality.
I think that platform does find you. You don't
does.
have to
That's
be
right.
intentionally setting out to have this big platform.
Not at all.
That platform will find you if you are sincere and passionate about what you're doing. It'll happen.
Yes.
It really will.
And if your personality is more leans more my side, and I'm kind of in the middle.
You're in between.
I really am.
Yeah,
it's so
you
weird.
are. Yes.
But I was born in '79, and if you look that up, I am right in between generations, and my year specifically doesn't have a brand. I don't really fit anywhere, so I guess that fits my personality. And I'm a middle child.
Your personality, though, Jimmy, from young up, has been pretty awesome. You could speak to a crowd of 5,000. I know you could. And you can relate.
I've done it.
To every level, yes.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what it is, rich, poor, healthy, sick, strong, weak, whatever. You have that ability, that God-given talent to reach the hearts of anyone, really, and put you in a small group, and you are just so passionate about it that people they navigate to you because you have that ability to say, hey, I care, and people know you genuinely do.
I just try to be consistent wherever I am.
You are
be the same
Jimmy.
person.
There's nothing fake about you, and I love all people who are like that. You don't dress any differently. I think if you met, no, I think if you were to meet,
I am always in bare feet.
Today, the President of the United States, you would simply be
I'd be
Jimmy.
barefoot.
You would be Jimmy. But you know what? The president would love you because you are genuine.
Well, and you're the same way.
And
I mean, I genuinely get that from you.
Yeah, I don't know.
The people who have that personality, though, where say that they don't want to go anywhere near big crowds, or to write online and have it out there.
Can't.
Perfect.
Yeah, right.
Then work right in your own family. If you're not comfortable talking to people outside your family, work within your family.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Saying that became very popular years and years ago, bloom where you are. Just bloom right where you are. Start there.
Absolutely.
And just do what your heart has you to do.
Yes.
And if you do that, you are a genuine success.
Yes.
Period.
Yeah.
You are.
Care about other people.
Yeah.
Be humble.
Yep.
Don't worry about how many people you're impacting. Don't worry about that. It is not. I still remember one of my church members has said this over and over, because there are times where, like, church membership ebbs and flows constantly.
With any church.
And, yes. Yeah. And so you get in these, like, really low points, and self-doubt creeps in and all this stuff. And I remember this church member on multiple occasions has put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, you know what? It is not about numbers.
No,
he said, you care about people, and keep doing that and let God do the rest.
Right.
And if that means there are 3 people in your life,
if we
then those 3 people will be impacted.
Simple rule, if we live by that, we are what God expects.
And it's liberating. And it's liberating to not feel that pressure.
It really is. Yeah, I think so often people feel they are failures if they're not on, out there reaching thousands of people. You're not.
It's just not true.
Every bit as meaningful life as the person that is, if you're reaching one by one by one, we need flowers to bloom wherever you are.
I still remember, I'll close with this, but a good family friend, Dr. Harold Schenk.
Oh, yeah.
I still remember, and he tells this story still to this day. He tells this story saying that it all began when I was a pagan little child. And somebody in small town Indiana, Pennsylvania, the town is Indiana, Pennsylvania, where he grew up, tapped his shoulder and said, "Hey, do you want to come to Vacation Bible School?"
I love
and he
when
said
Harold talks about
it was this small, it's a small church like ours, small group of people, just volunteers working at this Vacation Bible School. Here comes this little kid. That made the biggest impact on his heart that he still talks about it to this day. And he says,
me chills,
that changed the course of my life forever.
And his family's life. And
generations.
Yes.
And he is one of the most...
grandchildren now who love God and who will serve God.
Yeah.
He's served churches that have been changed, whole groups of people because of that one person who tapped on Harold's shoulder when he was a mere little boy and said, "Would you like to come to Vacation?"
Not only has he been in ministry his entire life, but he also is and he's very humble about this, but he'd probably turn red in the face if he heard me say this, but he's one of the most respected Bible scholars.
He is.
A genuine Hebrew Bible scholar.
Right.
This guy is off the charts. I was in seminary, and we were reading Dr. Schenk's material, and I'm like, this is amazing. I
know that
top
man.
notch.
Yeah. And
well-respected Bible scholar.
And you are right. He is among the most humble.
It started with
all
VBS.
People. Yeah, I love that. That's a great note to end on.
And look at the thousands of lives that he's impacted over the course of his life.
Absolutely, Jimmy. Yeah.
One by one.
So don't you ever feel that you're not doing what you should be doing or that you're not doing enough if you just remember one by one by one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for tuning into this episode, and we will catch you next round.
Thanks again for listening to today's episode. A special thank you to our patrons who make this podcast possible. Please help us get the word out by searching for the Speaking Out on Sex Abuse podcast in your favorite podcast app. Be sure to hit subscribe and rate the show. Please consider supporting the podcast by becoming a patron and check out the rewards our patrons receive.